Lam.
Hi, guys.
She organized the whole thing, and she's awesome. So
Thank you. I moved chairs,
Yes,
but
well done, Lane.
no, we're super excited to host today with our friends from Youbi and EmpireDAO. So welcome.
yeah,
I just want to say a quick few words before we start. So I'm with Youbi Capital. We're a Web3 VC and accelerator since 2017. This was kind of our idea to reach out to Republic Crypto and put this together. It's obviously been a pretty rough week again for crypto, and it's only Wednesday. If you're anything like me, probably SEC court documents are your bedside reading. Luckily, they put me to sleep, so it's worked out well. But thank you all for coming. You know, during a week like this, I think it's especially important to have a panel like we're having, right? This is a panel about social utility. I think there's skepticism. Broadly, regulators are skeptical about crypto's ability to deliver, which is why they're not creating frameworks for us. And this is an opportunity to explore why we're here, how far we are along in bringing consumers to crypto, and really unleashing all the benefits that it offers. So we hope you enjoy the panel. Thank you all for coming.
yeah, and super excited that we got a ton of like industry leaders and smart people on the panel today from leading L1 protocols. So I think it's going to be a very interesting debate. And also stay tuned. I'm going to use this space to host more crypto events in the coming months with Lam. And yeah, you guys are all on the email list now. So we're going to hopefully not sending you too much scam emails, but yeah, lots of event invite to come here to have a chat with us.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, panelists, please come to the front. Yeah. Yeah, I'm super happy to see so many familiar faces on this panel, and I think we should start with some self-introductions first. So start with myself. I'm Jonathan. I joined crypto full-time in early 2021 as a VC investment associate at Digital Currency Group. And I joined Republic, leading the infrastructure advisory and also assisting our investment process. And I'm going to ask you guys to maybe give a quick introduction of yourself. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm Phillip. I'm part of the founding team at Avalanche. Initially joined as head of strategy and operations. The role has changed a lot. You know, the project has grown a lot since I joined, but nowadays work on business development, ecosystem development, and just a little bit of everything across our entire platform and ecosystem.
Hey everyone, my name is Pedro Miranda. Currently at the Solana Foundation in a business development capacity, focusing on NFTs, also co-lead our Web3 social and creators initiatives, as well as consumer applications, focusing on onboarding Web2, Web 2.5 creators. Started my Web3 journey at Consensus on the Ethereum side, so focusing on building central bank digital currencies and payment infrastructures. Spent a bit of time in TradFi, about 2 years at Silicon Valley Bank, ironically, and then went back into crypto by joining Metaplex, which is the NFT infrastructure standard on Solana, as one of the first non-technical employees. Joined the foundation around 6 months ago. Just want to say I'm really excited to be here, especially with the events this week. I think it's really important as an industry that we come together and learn from each other and support each other.
Couldn't agree more. Hey everybody, my name is Cameron Dennis. I've been working in your ecosystem for the last 2.5 years or so. Been in blockchain space for about 6 or 7. At Near, I first joined on the business development capacity, then moved to DevRel, then moved to investor relations, then moved back to BD, and then I did strategy. And so now I'm helping lead US growth. So all the events this week are definitely relevant to me. And yeah, I'm mostly interested in how do we actually decentralize these large foundations. And so I'm working very closely with this huge initiative called the Near Digital Collective to actually move a huge portion of the Near Foundation treasury to a network of DAOs. And how do we actually build the open web as a collective of contributors rather than this whole like giant top-down approach. So yeah, a bit about me.
Hey all, Danny Zuckerman, one of the founders of 3 Box Labs. we're building Ceramic. If each of these folks are here from blockchains that are really L1s for value and assets and financial data, Ceramic is the data infrastructure for all the other data that's not scarce, that you don't need double spend protection for, but there's a lot more of that flowing through the web, and so you need a lot more scalability and some other properties. And so bringing the benefits of decentralization, composability to the rest of the data online and really living up to that Web3 vision, and making the kind of user experiences and applications that are going to bring real mainstream users over from more traditional apps to Web3 possible. Excited to talk about this.
Hey, I'm Nash Foster. I'm one of the founders of Silvermint, and we're going to be the fastest blockchain in the entire world.
Nice. And with that bold statement. So, yeah, I think everyone on the panel here are here for a reason. They're all like leaders in the space, and I'm gonna ask a question, and like all of you to give your own perspective and answer to these questions. So, in no particular orders, maybe we can just go from Phillip. Yeah. So I think to start off, like today's topic is about like consumer applications. The reason why we're talking about it is we wanted to onboard more users into crypto, and these are all the infrastructure leaders in the space. And I think my first question is, everyone's talking about user adoption, and like consumer applications are so important of driving these users into using blockchain and technology, powered by these layer ones that they are working on. And I think my first question is, do you guys see any sort of early signs of adoptions right now in the space, just from what you see and the conversations you've been having? Yeah.
So I guess I'll start us off. But I guess on the consumer side, I think what comes to mind are two big areas. One is the Web3 gaming side of things. We since like early last year have focused really hard on building out a team to not only help Web3 gaming teams get off the ground and start building on Avalanche, but also Web2 studios that are interested in building in Web3 and supporting them with product development, connecting them with different players in the ecosystem. To that end, we actually launched a program called Avalanche Arcade. Some of the large Web2 studios like Gree, Gumi, and for those of you guys who don't know, some of these guys have published games for like, well-known IP like Naruto and like One Punch Man for the anime fans out there, to really sort of understand the value of building in Web3. Our team has also been around for a while and seen a lot of different games building in the Avalanche ecosystem, and also offers sort of advisory and guidance to these large studios to help them with tokenomics and different types of sort of in-game mechanics, and really sort of be able to figure out like how to get started in Web3. So that's one area. And then another area I think is, like where we're seeing some, pretty large players start building is in the sort of loyalty and rewards type space. And so one pretty big sort of example of that on Avalanche is SK, one of the largest Korean conglomerates. They just deployed OK Cashback, one of their large sort of loyalty and rewards programs on an Avalanche subnet. And so that subnet I think has about like 60,000 active users since deploying just about a week ago. So seeing a lot of activity in that space as well.
Awesome. Cool.
I love Naruto, so that's pretty cool. I'll start. I'll say three things. First and foremost, Web3 loyalty I think is extremely important in terms of like when you're pitching these large enterprises. It's extremely interesting that they're extremely receptive to loyalty and the current fragmented system in terms of how loyalty is conducted today with these walled gardens specific to apps, or even like within the same company, there's like different regional restrictions that essentially make data sharing really, really difficult and almost impossible. So on Solana, two large players on the Web3 loyalty space. One is ASICS, that they launched a shoe, Solana shoe specific to the Solana blockchain that was token gated, that offered rewards in the ecosystem and then for other external partners. And then Toys R Us is also developing a similar program on the Solana blockchain. That's extremely interesting and exciting to see. The second area is creator monetization, which I think is extremely important. I think we talked about before this panel, Solana is blessed to have a very large NFT ecosystem, which I think is which is V0 in terms of the creator space and the creator economy. We're close to $4 billion in primary and secondary NFT sales. But when you look at creators, we actually have 215,000 creators that have ever minted or received a royalty on the Solana blockchain. And you have companies like ExchangeArt, which is a leading one-on-one marketplace, or Access Protocol, which is a token-gated content accessing protocol leading the charge. Last thing I'll say, third, collectibles, right? There's like such a humanistic element of collecting things beyond the speculative nature of it. So there's two interesting projects. I'll focus on one specifically called Drip House on Solana. Drip House, essentially you sign up for their service with your wallet and your Twitter. You receive a free NFT every week from a esteemed artist or a brand or a company with a gamified element. So that NFT gives you access to a specific brand or experience. And then in return, you could kind of trade those or essentially change it dynamically. I say it's non-speculative because if you look at the data, people aren't actually flipping this NFTs for like a quick buck, but they're really holding on to them, showing them off, and then also like trying to compete these packs, which ultimately shows that the NFT ecosystem, and I think consumer apps are evolving from like this V0 speculative PFP projects to organization of like social capital.
Got it. Yeah. So just regarding the question, you're saying like, what are the main like
early signs of adoption that you see?
Yeah. So on Near, there's this pretty popular app called Sweatcoin. Sweatcoin is a move to earn app that was primarily Web 2 based, over 100 million downloads historically, and I think this is like a really cool pilot because. I frame it as a pilot despite the insane growth, because really if we're trying to attract like billions of people to Web3, you got to give them that Web 2 experience and give them the option to exit to Web3 with as little friction as possible if they see the value. You're not going to get someone to like maintain a seed phrase and actually like, manage their own keys if it's not easy. And so on Near, every wallet is by default a smart contract with human readable addresses, because all of Beyonce's fans, I can assure you, are not going to be using 0x handles to interact on the open web. It needs to be understandable. So giving them, what's up? Yeah, I know, crazy. And so things like, account recovery, all this stuff is actually built into the protocol, which is really cool. And then the Sweatcoin example is, I think there was over like 14 million users that joined Near in a day without any blips in the network, like not an increase in gas fees, no, the chain maintained uptime. This is really cool. To me, this is like how we actually onboard billions of people to the space, is making sure that those users actually see the value in the open web. Because if we're just trying to dangle carrots in front of their face to come on board, they're going to leave right away. We need to make sure it's sticky. We need to make sure that infrastructure is actually frictionless. And so it starts with account abstraction built in the protocol, and that's live today. Everyone's talking about this in the ETH space. But besides that, yes, we are working very closely with all these like large Web 2 gaming studios and these loyalty programs. New Marble's one out of Korea. I think they work on like a lot of the Marvel games. Grupo Nuestro, which is like a giant grocery store conglomerate in Latin America. All this is really cool, but to me, it's all about key management and making sure that ability to exit into Web3 is as frictionless and abstracted away as possible.
So I really think of the key feature and enabler of the open web is composability, and the ability for multiple applications to build on top of the same data and assets, and for users to take that with them seamlessly across them and really deplatform what we've gotten used to in today's web is the thing that creates a completely new shape of the internet. It creates shared underlying content networks, more competition and vibrancy at the application layer, and a lot more freedom and specialization of the products and services we have online. And we're barely seeing any of that today in the shape that's going to truly let this take off. Like, we'll know that's taking off because the pace of innovation in the products we see accelerates exponentially because the switching costs are so much lower for users. So developers can build on these same underlying primitives and very quickly like innovate, and you don't have to have a 10x better product. You just have to have something that contributes to the ecosystem. We've seen that with DeFi Legos, which is speculation. And we saw DeFi Summer and how rapidly innovation took off when that happened. I think we haven't really seen that in many other cases. I think all of these examples are like the potential primitive that could let this take off, but they're still mostly in relatively siloed end-to-end use cases or applications. And so I want to see like reuse of some of this stuff before I think, okay, this is the thing that's going to truly get mainstream usage. The one that hasn't been mentioned yet that I see the most promise in is collaborative communities. I dislike the term DAOs for a whole bunch of reasons, but they have like a great vision. But there's a whole bunch of other ecosystems where you have a community of people who want to share underlying something. Scientific data is a really good one. Academic researchers who have a really hard time collaborating on papers, sharing references, and building on each other's knowledge. So we see some really promising applications like Lateral in our ecosystem who are making it easier for researchers to collaborate on that underlying information and do lots of things with it. Publish, read, cite, annotate, and all these different use cases have different interfaces, have different applications, but they're operating on the same underlying network. So academic researchers, not the billions of users, it's a smaller market, but it has this property of composability that I think hints at what we'll see really make everything take off.
Yeah, these are all great answers, man. I'll just say that, 5 years ago, I used to ask people if they'd ever heard of crypto. And now I just ask them which ones they hold. and very few people don't have any, right? Like it's transformative in terms of the ability of people to use finance to so I'm very excited about where we're going in this space.
Yep. All right. Thanks everyone for sharing all those exciting movements. I'm super excited about some of these latest movements you guys shared. So one thing let's get nerdy a little bit. So so I would like to learn more, as a user, right? I'd like to learn more about some of the technical differentiations and architectural design choices that your chain has made to allow these applications to build easily on your chain, and also get them ready to onboard large amounts of user and have a good experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, one of the defining features of Avalanche was the consensus protocol and being kind of like a generation 3 breakthrough consensus technology. But at the end of the day, what we really prided ourselves on was the very fast finality, basically how fast your transaction can confirm. And so all the transactions on Avalanche confirm in less than a second right now. And I think, for a lot of the consumer applications, especially gaming applications, they can't deal with a chain that, high fees and low throughput aside for, some of the kind of status quo kind of legacy blockchains, right? Even if you have very high TPS and your transactions confirm every 10 seconds, or there's going to be reorgs where, you have a chain that is finalized and then, another part of the network finalized another part of the chain. So now you have to switch over to that chain. All these things are really bad for user experience. And so I think even though, the Avalanche started off as a kind of a nerdy technical idea and project, a lot of the core sort of problems that it was, solving was directly related to user experience, right? I think another part of the sort of value proposition of Avalanche as a network is the idea of like subnets, subnetworks, where anybody, the idea is like you can take any type of virtual machine technology, say like even like the Solana virtual machine or near virtual machine, layer that on top of the Avalanche consensus protocol, and it'll just run out, like out of the box. And so basically the idea is like you have a very flexible, very customizable platform where, you can support any type of technology or any type of feature that you'd like. So I think, a lot of the sort of consumer facing apps like the SK loyalty rewards application, they're built on an Avalanche subnet for a reason. It's, the company itself has, millions of users, and it is, like just building on the main Avalanche network is insufficient for them to handle all the features that they want and the transaction volume. So yeah, like, from the infrastructure perspective, I think just to summarize, like just the very fast finality and also the customizability of subnets is what kind of, helps, I guess, some of these more consumer-facing applications get off the ground.
Yeah, so Solana does also enjoy fast settlement times and fast finality, but I want to emphasize one really good point you made. I don't think we talk about the consequences of reorgs enough, like in the crypto space, particularly on some other blockchains where, you could be going to, say, like Starbucks, for example, and you essentially go buy your coffee, you leave the coffee shop with your coffee, yep. And then the transaction that you bought the coffee got reorged and essentially scaled back like it never happened.
Isn't that the whole point?
That's very
Why
that's
would you
very
even
bad.
need reorgs, though? I mean, come on.
That's very bad from like forget gaming, right? From like a consumer application, from a small business perspective. So wanted to highlight that. I think stuff that we're focusing on Solana, we recently released a new primitive called state compression, which allows you to essentially prove massive amounts of information on chain utilizing Merkle trees. We released it specifically for NFTs. So you might have heard it with NFT compression. The example that I told you before, Drip House, has minted over 5 million NFTs for roughly $600, right? So we're trying to get to a point where it's Web 2 unit of economics in Web 3 without sacrificing, censorship resistance, composability, fast finality, right? I think number two, something really interesting. You mentioned gas fees. We also recently implemented a local fee market. So most chains run on a global fee market where the price of gas is standardized across every single application and user. Solana doesn't work that way. Solana, there are fee programs for specific applications. So essentially, you have a different price of gas or a transaction fee for different applications. So I think we're thinking ahead in terms of when you're thinking about the new killer consumer application. We don't want an other side mint on Ethereum to bring down the chain, right? An Uber in New York, the price of Uber in New York should definitely not impact the price of an Uber, in Brazil, for example. So that localized approach is interesting when you think about a really sophisticated consumer ecosystem.
Yeah, that checks. When you're talking about like developer, experience on Near, again, I mentioned account is every wallet is a smart contract, which is really cool. So you can arbitrarily manage like access to that account. And then the other thing that really attracted me is WebAssembly based. So you can actually write smart contracts in JavaScript live today. And this is really cool because, we're going after the 24 million JavaScript developers out there instead of, I think it's around like 20,000 or so blockchain devs. This is really neat because now we are going to enable all of those people to innovate, in Web3 instead of having them go through all these different Solidity and Rust and all these especially Rust. For context, I run a blockchain education nonprofit, been doing this for about 7 years. We start courses at universities. People can't learn Rust, that they can, but they don't. And so this is really exciting for me because we're bringing the simplicity that's actually made, just normal web development is popular to the blockchain space. And then recently there's been this huge development called the blockchain operating system, also known as the BOSS. And this is introducing this idea of component-based development to the blockchain space. And so you're going to be able to build pretty much full stack blockchain apps in React and JavaScript, assuming that the contracts exist, which a lot of them do. A lot of them have been standardized, they've been audited, and so now you're able to take, let's say, and this is multi-chain, by the way, which is, I really love this panel because we were jamming earlier about like, how can we run in the same website, like an NFT minter on Solana and an AMM DEX on Avalanche, and have one wallet where a user has one seed phrase that can access any of these apps. And so users stop caring about what blockchain your app is on. Users, honestly, because they don't. They just want a good experience. And so this can all render locally in the browser, be totally decentralized. And this is, to me, like what blockchain mass adoption will look like. But all these fragmented ecosystems with liquidity fragmentation, everything is going to lead to a really, really poor experience. And so we're addressing this today. It launched about 2 months ago. Right now, there's only EVM and near compatibility. The virtual machine is being upgraded to support other blockchains, which is really cool. And I'm super excited about like the whole JavaScript React side of things. And we're actually going to be running workshops here every Thursday teaching about it. So if anyone's interested, actually the person teaching it, he just started learning how to program about a year ago. And he's now shipped like more components than almost anybody. So this is now, we're bringing this like level of blockchain development to like everyday people interested in web development. And this is sick, because if we get all these like people coming out of these web developer boot camps out of, India and Bangladesh shipping, thousands of people a year, now they're able to become blockchain developers and program money. Like this is real, innovation. So super excited about that. And also Near is like pretty well renowned for its awesome docs and developer experience. So yeah, there's that.
So again, Ceramic basically brings data alongside value as part of the infrastructure that Web3 developers can build on top of. And so it brings a lot of the same principles as a blockchain. So decentralization and composability and censorship resistance. But when you're building for data, you have really different design principles than when you're building for value. And probably the two that are most important, first, identity and access control. So on Ceramic, any blockchain key or wallet across any of these, any of the wallets on any of these L1s can be used to control a DID, which is a decentralized identifier. It's basically a cryptographic identifier. It's an abstraction away from a single key to sign data transactions. And access control, read-write, who can mutate those streams of data. And so you have the ability to take data with you across multiple chains, multiple platforms, multiple wallets, multiple keys, which is really important because otherwise you're fragmenting all of your experiences online. And if you have to rotate wallets or keys, you lose your entire past history of experiences, which is just not tenable for like a real Web3 experience. So that like full kind of identity system is super important for data ledger. The other is scalability. Orders of magnitude more data transactions flowing through websites than value transactions. And so need to be able to scale much more than any L1 blockchain, any financial kind of chain is ever going to. The good news is you can process all those transactions basically in parallel instead of in sequence. And so Ceramic can basically shard down to the like individual user account level. You can almost think of every user having their own like chain of events that they're signing. And the network just needs to kind of sync those across nodes under different conditions because you don't have like reorgs don't have the same cost basically for data as they do for value. And so that's like some core ways that Ceramic looks really different than any financial L1.
Yeah, so I really like what you had to say about Near. I mean, I think that this is 100% the way that we go forward in blockchain. Like, you've got to appeal to the JavaScript guys, right? Like, there's a million of them, and there's only a few of us. And at the end of the day, nobody's gonna spend time figuring out what the borrow checker is, in order to learn Rust so they can run some smart contracts. They want to be able to do the work that they do every single day using, the technologies that they understand. So, at the end, ultimately it's got to be fast and easy and simple. And what I tell my guys is, I say, look, if somebody's going to learn how to work with the blockchain, give them a how-to that that they can read and work with on their lunch break, right? That's how we appeal to the wide variety of users that are out there. You're not gonna get these guys, developers by the millions if they have to spend, Go ahead.
Yeah, especially with like large enterprises, they're not going to uptrain their employees to
100%.
learn Rust.
Yeah,
And
no,
so
that's not happening.
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So. And also, when you were talking about does your account your account model is very similar to Near in the regards it's a smart contract. You're able to shard a wallet. You can do all that. Just curious.
So we use DIDs, which is spec from W3C for these cryptographic identifiers that can be controlled by EOAs or smart contract wallets. So it's not actually like a smart contract system itself. It's a spec for any kind of cryptographic identifier that can sign these transactions. And so it supports a Near accounts along with others. But there's specific ways that you rotate keys for a DID that's a little bit different from a smart contract account.
All right, awesome. I'm taking some notes. I think everyone's dropping a lot of knowledge on how they support applications technically. I think to follow up on that, right? Because it takes a lot to make a consumer application successful. Obviously, you need to have good tech, but you also need to target the right audience or educate them, right? So in terms of as layer one, how do you guys support these applications and beyond technology, right? And you guys can probably see that in a different lens. So I'm very curious to hear about that. So.
Yeah, so I touched a little bit upon this with the Avalanche arcade type concept, but just to drill a little bit deeper, a lot of the folks at working at Web 2 type gaming studios, for example, they Web 3 is an extremely foreign concept to them. We're fortunate to have a fellow named Ed Chang who came to us from EA, and he was already doing a lot of stuff in DeFi, and he was able to get onboarded pretty quickly. But I think there's also sort of a lot of risk, right, with the larger sort of kind of Fortune 500 enterprise. Some of these Web 2 studios might fall into that category, and there's a lot of sort of potential pitfalls that I think at the end of the day, the best applications are usually built by people who have a very strong sort of skill set. Maybe from Web 2, they might be a really good developer. Especially for gaming, you have to have to develop a good game, you have to have some type of Web 2 gaming development background, right? But some of the best games on Avalanche, actually our first game was a game called Crabata that had two co-founders. One of them was a very crypto native guy who was just doing everything in DeFi, knew everything that was going on Ethereum and Avalanche as well. And then they also had a traditional gaming developer from a company called Gameloft. And the union of these sort of two sort of skill sets is usually what helps sort of ensure the project itself is successful. So what we're trying to do is create that sort of Web3 expertise, create a brain trust around folks with the experience to really guide the very talented folks that come from the Web2 world into Web3 as they as they start their journey. And so some of the things I mentioned, a lot of it's connections on the BD side, but I think it's the sort of advice and actual sort of product support where and then we don't even charge for this, right? It's all sort of done to help out the ecosystem, and essentially our entire team at Avalanche is essentially a team of consultants to help projects get off the ground. So
yeah, I was going to steal the brain trust, but then you degraded us to consultants, which is not. So I know the Ava team and I know the Near team. I think so I can speak for myself and then them when the human capital at these foundations it's very high level, right? I think to your point, it takes a certain person to be killer at your Web 2 job and then also have like a crypto curiosity and want to execute on the Web3 side. But you see like a lot of these foundations bring on these types of people who, can be more than a consultant for projects building on Near, Solana, or with you all, right? So a lot of it is like product discovery work and almost being like a product manager, BD connections. I think I'll touch on one thing. Both on the Solana Venture side and the Solana Foundation, we are actively still investing on the venture side. And then from the foundation perspective, we do offer strategic grants. I'll open one Pandora's box, which is like, we're supporting AI as a new initiative in terms of like Web3 and AI intersection. So the first ChatGPT Web3 plugin is built on Solana. You could query Solana account state directly on ChatGPT, which is pretty cool. I think the next step is essentially kind of this like autonomous AI that we were discussing before the panel. And then also earmarking, $10 million for AI and Web3 development, right? But I think, I want to emphasize that I think our work is very similar in that it's a crossover of like product, BD, and then, like strategic investment, which is really cool to see. And for the consumer apps is really fulfilling because you get to use and experiment with the applications firsthand and give direct feedback.
Yeah, on the project support side, the Near Foundation has a sort of blockchain success team, and they work with large enterprises, essentially doing solutions engineering work, as Phillip and you highlighted. But then this big new experiment that we're running is this thing called Near Horizon. And what Near Horizon is a two-sided on-chain marketplace between service providers and people who need services. So if you're a project that needs audits, lawyers, marketing agencies, design studios, and investors actually. So I helped manage the investor network for a while. We connected tons of projects, there's tons of VCs. That was good, but it actually just doesn't scale. Like there's over 1,000 projects building on Near today, and there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to communicate with all of them. And so if we're going to actually try to scale this initiative, we're going to dog food our own tech. All this is actually on the blockchain operating system, the front end as well. And you can actually get these support channels today, and even Friday, we're having a demo day at the MasterCard building, if anyone's interested, where we're getting people to actually just pitch right in front of investors. We ran one of these in San Francisco about a couple weeks ago. One of the projects raised money. This is like one tiny way that we support people, but everything from like boots on the ground, support channels, asynchronous support through the Near Horizon program. If you're a large enterprise, you get like potentially grants, but probably not. The whole idea is like they should be paying us, not us paying them for solutions engineering work. And so that's pretty much done on the Near Foundation side. And then if on the DeFi side, there is this organization called Proximity Labs. They sometimes provide some strategic liquidity, and we also do connect people to, not me, but the Proximity team, to market makers and investors. And so pretty much whatever you need, there's a support channel for that. Mintbase has an NFT program. Mintbase is NFT infrastructure on Near. So it really just depends the vertical in which you're building. And then we also run what I call builder groups. So every 2 weeks, there is a vertical specific group. Like all the DeFi builders will get together. All the NFT builders will get together. We talk about standards. We talk about what's missing. Like it's very, kind of grassroots. And that's what I run day to day. So it depends what you need. And yeah, just let me know if you have any questions after.
Ours is a little simpler. We don't have a token and the same kind of treasury that some of the other L1s do. But our whole team is operating in our community every day. And so we work really closely from our core devs up through DevRel and everybody in between, all three founders, with anyone building in the ecosystem, in particular trying to help facilitate collaboration around data models, which is kind of the schema around which you are saving, storing, and querying data on Ceramic. And so really making composability not just theoretical, but real across all these applications. But the main thing we do is to make the product and infrastructure better. There's no other way to build on Web3 data in a scaled way, in a cheap way, and in a kind of fully decentralized and composable way. And so our focus is really just like making that better and better for developers so they have that option alongside the financial blockchain infrastructure.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think one of the things that L1s need to do better, that they haven't done particularly well in the past, is provide SDKs to the actual developers they're going to build on the platform, and be able to give those developers the at the end of the day, they gotta write code, man. Like so they have to have SDKs that they can use. So that's what we're about. We're about being fast, and we're about being cheap, and we're about giving great SDKs to developers. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, you guys heard them. So if you have good ideas or you're building something, definitely hit them up. They're free consultants, basically. So definitely leverage that resource. They're super smart, and I'm pretty sure they have some good advice to offer. So yeah, one last question. So I think Pedro was already foreshadowing a little bit. The work keeps evolving. Now AI is in the talks of everyone, and who knows what's going to happen 5 years from now. And we're all trying to predict the future, right? And maybe maybe you guys can share some exciting development that you guys are testing or running to get prepared for the next wave of adoption or next wave of technology, like innovations. Yeah.
There's a pretty cool project that we announced at the Avalanche Summit. So our founder, Emin here, instead of giving a roadmap of what does the next 5 years of Avalanche look like, type of a typical keynote, he basically went back to the drawing board and essentially came up with a new idea called coin-operated agents. And the core idea is, what if we created a blockchain where you don't you don't need to write any code to deploy a smart contract or interact with that blockchain? What if it was all done with AI and large language models? And so the idea is if I want to deploy an application on this blockchain, and it'll be kind of deployed as a subnetwork on Avalanche, I can just write whatever application I want. Maybe, I want to deploy a DeFi protocol. I'll write what this DeFi protocol does in plain text, and it'll just generate something, and it'll sort of be available for everybody to use. And if I wanted to interact with this thing, I don't need MetaMask anymore. I just want to. I'll just write up okay, I want to deposit funds here, send it around or whatever. A string of sort of a sequence of events that I want to happen. And so this is this is a piece of infrastructure, but I think our founder, he said it himself. The way he put it was this is either a really good idea or a really horrible idea. But I think it's one, I think just inspiring people to kind of think about what's next in blockchain. What are some cool ideas that we can explore in AI or sort of thinking outside the box, right? But another thing is it could be a sort of breeding ground for folks who aren't even developers to maybe kind of think about think and sort of design and deploy applications we haven't even thought of yet. So it's called coin operating agents. It's still kind of a research project. We just kind of put it out there as an idea, kind of inviting the community to build with us, and excited to see where it goes.
Cool. I'll let you handle key management, because maybe that's going to be yours. I'll touch on two things. First is Jump Crypto is building a independent and new validator client for the Solana blockchain. So Solana is going to be, I think, one of the only blockchains besides Ethereum that has a completely independent, built from the ground up, independent validator, written completely in C, which is kind of crazy. You guys were reminiscing about Rust here. And in terms of it's crazy. It's worse than Rust, arguably. And from the transactions per second, it's going to increase the capacity to theoretical 600,000 transactions per second to 1.2 million counting voting transactions on Solana. We had a really interesting discussion beforehand around TPS, transaction per second, really right now is just represents demand of the blockchain. And I think this is something that we have to acknowledge, that all these transactions per second, reads on every single chain is just demand, right? It's not measuring the true capacity of any blockchain, because we don't have enough demand for block space on any blockchain right now. So I think when you look at, the path to 1 billion users, many blockchains, including Solana, we're battle testing infrastructure today to be ready for that use case that will have to have 500,000 plus transactions per second, which is way better than the current financial TradFi infrastructure that we have today. The second thing I would like to touch on is our new token standard called Token 22, which is coming out in the next few months, which essentially allows for confidential transfers between blockchain addresses on Solana. So, if you ever sent a Venmo transaction and you commented on your friend's Venmo transaction, it's the same idea, where right now data, and Danny can attest to this, on any blockchain is actually, although not readable, extremely transparent. So for some payment infrastructure use cases where KYC, AML, and a certain degree of privacy preservation might be needed for any regulatory purpose, we're gearing up for confidential transfers when that use case evolves, hopefully in the near future.
That's super sick. Yeah, privacy is absolutely prerequisite to mass adoption. Just on the AI front, I don't know if anyone here knows the paper. It's called Attention is All You Need. It describes transformers, the T in ChatGPT. Came out of Google, I believe, in 14, 15. It was co-authored by Ilya Palasukin, who's the co-founder of Near. And the first application of Near, actually Near started off as an AI company called Near AI, because AI is near. And the whole point was to create a data labeling model, because if Google and Facebook and Amazon are the primary companies that control superintelligence, and they are by default, like the law, profit maximizing organizations, humanity might be at risk. So we need to create a more human governed and owned superintelligence. And so that's why Near actually got started. And they built a blockchain because there was no network at the time that can process payments for people to label data, that the transaction was cheaper than the payment to actually pay them to label it. And so that's why Near got started. One of the co-founders is actually 100% committed to this vision today. And he's working on a project. You can go watch NearCon videos to learn more about that. But in terms of the prerequisites to mass adoption, yeah, you need a scalable chain. Near processes, theoretically, not today, 100,000 transactions per second, 1 to 2 second block finality, depending if you're moving transactions across shards. It's shards, so you're able to maintain that throughput consistently, no matter the demand. And then next thing to me is user experience. So you need flexible key management to do recovery, to do have human readable accounts. That's a prerequisite. But you need to also provide developers that optionality. So I'm super excited about the continuation of the JavaScript SDK and this component-based design through this blockchain operating system. I hate all the jargon as much as you guys do, but this is, to me, a really, really interesting thing. And then, privacy-wise, there's some really cool research going on in the Near ecosystem. There was a huge announcement just happened yesterday that we decreased a team in the ecosystem, bridging time between Near to Ethereum from, I believe it was 8 hours to a minute or 2 minutes. With these new ZK, it's a ZK bridge that launched. It's called Electron Labs. Check it out. So the ZK side is definitely underway. I'm super interested in this space because, my thesis is you need, strong liquidity to make the economy go round and round. Then you need the ownership infrastructure. So that's all the NFT standards and whatnot. The coordination tools is the next thing. And this is where, if you guys are really interested in how do you actually decentralize an ecosystem, check out the Near Digital Collective. This is the initiative to decentralize the Near Foundation. And I'm actually leaving the Near Foundation right now to join the collective and join the ecosystem to build more bottom up. So I'm super excited about that. And then last but not least, again, is privacy. And if we have all of these things, now we're able to, in my eyes, address the masses. Because right now, there's no way in hell kids should be using blockchains in my eyes, because they're probably going to lose their keys. And, you know, in the courses that I run, there are upper division computer science students at great schools like UCLA and UT and all these. They lose their keys in the same workshops that we teach, like in the same 45-minute to hour-long workshop. Like, we are not ready for mass adoption until we actually bake this in either to the protocol level or every single wallet. And so all this is happening simultaneously, which is really exciting, but also super overwhelming. And so, if you have any questions, like, again, just feel free to stop me. We run workshops here every single week, and we also do an SF. Just check it out or contact me.
I agree with all those answers, so I'll say something slightly more abstract and meta, which is I think we need a lot more product thinking in the space, because these are all such abstract general challenges, and we have a tendency in the space to like build for all possible use cases and the huge vision we have and the entire internet and all of the things we could use this for, and that's just like an intractable problem because we don't have constraints that let you say, okay, like privacy for this or UX for that, and so we need more product managers, product thinking to be able to like narrow the constraints and really like be disciplined about what is this tech and where it's at today and where the solvable bottlenecks ahead, where are those so valuable that we can do something like really compelling, even with all the trade-offs that we have today and even with all the gaps. And that's how you can get the first waves of real adoption, and it's the app infrastructure cycles from there. And so one thing that I found, not to take us back down the AI rabbit hole, but like we at Ceramic, the hardest role we found to hire for is product people. I don't know if y'all have found the same thing, but bringing product people into the space, their job is to think about where is there both a market and the tech ready for it. And that intersection has been the hardest sell for us, and we've seen the least talent in the space around that, including at the folks in our community building, and the AI wave that we're seeing hasn't had that. I have tons of talented product folks jumping into AI, and that's really accelerating how fast that infrastructure and application is taking off because they're solving real problems. So I think we need a lot more of that in our space.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody's talking about AI. I'll kind of offer a slightly different opinion. I don't think there are any reasonable investments or startups in the AI space. I think 100% of AI is going to be open source. All of the models that have come out of closed source companies like Google, Facebook, whatever, they have been basically dominated by open source models that are free to use. So we've got guys back in Salt Lake City where I'm from that are playing with AI, and we're doing it on our desktops, and we're using open source models. We're using stuff that's free, man. And there's no possibility that that AI is actually gonna work the way that traditional VC funded startups have worked. It's gonna be free. That's the bottom line, and that's better, right? Because it means we're all gonna get access to it faster, cheaper, easier. We're gonna have it running in our house. It's gonna be decentralized. From the get-go, it's already decentralized right now.
Awesome. So I don't want to make us sit here forever, but I want to leave some time for you guys maybe to ask some direct questions to them, either like here, or if no one raised their hands up, these guys will be hanging around in the space for a little bit, so you guys should grab them for any questions you have. But I really want to thank you for all your time and insights today. I learned a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna follow up. Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
So thanks. I don't know if I need the microphone. Thank you. So my name is Anastasia. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm over in New York just visiting, heading back to Hong Kong tomorrow. And I really want to, first of all, thank all of you for sharing how much support you actually give to your startups that are building on top of your foundations. I run dFactor, which is a platform built on Polygon, unfortunately not on none of your blockchains, but we're also a platform for real world asset projects. So I think it's very I guess, meaningful from the foundation side of things, where you have a lot of support for technical guys, and you've talked a lot about code and transformation in the industry that happened. But my question would be more about the consumer adoption. I loved your example about Sweatcoin. I use it myself. I use it as an example whenever people ask me, what does our parent generation needs to do in order to learn about blockchain and adopt it? And I always say it actually doesn't mean that they have to learn a lot about the technology. I have my gym coach who is younger than me, and she uses Sweatcoin just because she understands she can walk and get points for it. She doesn't know anything about crypto. So it's always about having that seamless adoption that is very intuitive and close to their daily experience. How do you see that your foundations or your organizations and the startups built on top of them would help the average consumer that is not into crypto kind of adopt those solutions that are built on your products? And I guess the best example would be maybe Apple, because every time you walk into an Apple store, they have workshops to educate consumers that have no idea about technology.
Who wants to take that?
I'll give an example. So when when a lot of sub networks started deploying on Avalanche, essentially we realized that a new sub network for the end user is kind of just interacting with a new network. So in MetaMask, you have to kind of add in a new RPC and so on. It's not the most straightforward user experience. So we kind of just took it upon ourselves to build, it's called the core wallet. Just a really simple and easy way for users to access all the networks, all the sub networks on Avalanche. And we've also made this open source so that anybody who, any other sort of wallet applications that, want to sort of leverage this technology can use it. So I think it's kind of taking the matter into our own hands and not sort of expecting somebody else to build everything, and just kind of providing as much infrastructure as possible to just enable, the other sort of projects in our ecosystem succeed, right?
Yeah, I think I want to emphasize the user-centric thinking. That's I think the most important thing from a product standpoint. Getting really talented people who care about product into Web3 and build for the users. I think sometimes we're in this academic or crypto echo chamber on Twitter, and we over-engineer the problems when candidly we don't spend time talking to users. A perfect example of that, when we were at Consensus, we're building a payment infrastructure for a really rural island economy. And we built this really amazing mobile application built on top of an enterprise Ethereum network. Things were different in 2017. And then we got to the island, and it was the first time we sent people, and no one was using the application at all. We had 2 people use the application, even though that the app was 99 times cheaper to send money to someone instantaneous compared to 5 to 7 days with their current financial infrastructure. And what we quickly realized was that the users, the people in this rural island, really love to go to the bank. It was their social activity for the day. They would get dressed up and they would go to the bank, and it was a social capital generating event for them. And I think about that situation a lot, because we really over-engineered this super elegant solution, a problem that no one was asking for, right? So I think a lot of us, builders and thinkers need to spend time with users, because there are core primitives that we've all talked about today that can solve real world problems. But I think we need to stop talking to each other and start talking to a more diverse crowd, candidly.
Yeah, I used to run workshops in the inner city of Miami every 2 weeks, and people who know absolutely nothing about how normal exchanges work, I was teaching them about AMMs. And guess what? They get it. You put the tool in their hand and it's easy enough to use, they understand. And so I totally agree. I think workshops are super important. I think online education does scale a little better. The hard part is you do need teachers and you need to pay those teachers if you want them to be high quality enough. But first things first is you need the tech to work. You need it to be easy to use. And so this is where there's another really cool project on Near right now. It's called FastAuth. It's a fast authorization. So if you go to near.org right now, you could just create a Near account with an email, and this is like V0 of FastAuth, so it's kind of just like an access key. You don't have to create the full account. You have to write down the 12 words. That's one approach. Another approach is this cool thing called trial accounts. And if you guys come to the demo day we're hosting on Friday at the MasterCard building, the founder will be there talking about this cool thing called trial accounts. So the whole point is, why are you trying to create a wallet why are you forcing your user to create a wallet before they try your app? Like, they should try your app, see that they see the value, and then create an account. Because it makes zero sense, like forcing somebody to write 12 words down that they're probably going to misplace before they even use your app. And so I think that's also a really good approach. Go to KeyPalm, that's what it's called, and then trial accounts is like sort of an application that they're building. But between those two things, like, I think we can onboard like the billions of people into this space. And then through education, I think like giving people, developers specifically right now, the optionality to build in many languages. Like, we're also totally EVM compatible through this virtual machine called Aurora. So similar to Avalanche, you can create any virtual machine. So we can create a Move virtual machine if there's enough Move developers that are interested in building on Near. But the cool thing here is you don't need to actually run infrastructure, because if you're building a consumer-facing app, there's no reason why you should be running validators, in my eyes. Like, focus on product market fit, focus on solving real problems instead of infrastructure. So how can us at Foundations abstract that problem away so we can empower the best entrepreneurs to build useful things?
Yep. So I just want to follow up on that. So I think it's an industry-wide problem. So builders, layer ones, and also like us investors, we all have different perspective, and also lawyers and regulators, right? We all need to come together, and we're all in this together. And I think these guys are pushing on their end. As investors, we sometimes write thought pieces, we sometimes do podcasts, and we sometimes triangulate on ideas to make sure the problem is addressing the real, the solution is addressing the real problem. And also a lot of it is like how you deliver that message, because if you find the right problem, it's going to resonate with users, but you need to find the right language that's going to pique their interest and really like speak their language, right? They could quickly get ideas, right? And so I really encourage founders to triangulate your ideas with people that you can trust in your network, to collect different perspective. And also don't be shy to ask for resources. These guys are great resources. Your investors are good resources. Other smart people in the space. I think the power of crypto is it's more flatter than Web2 structures, where people focus a lot on titles or years of experience. I think in crypto, most people are open to have an open conversation and triangulate your ideas and discuss care about what you're building, right? So I think as founders, that's super important. Just make sure you're aligning yourself with the smart people, and we're all in this together and collecting different perspective and focusing on solving the real problems like these guys have been talking about. Yeah. So, all right. Anyone else? I think we can close out the panel, and people feel free to grab them for a one-on-one conversation. But I just want to say thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Super informative. I learned a lot, but we should do this more often. Yeah.